Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to section 9.5, Solving Quadratic Equations by Using the Quadratic Formula, Part 1. And you may ask yourself, what is the quadratic formula? Well, it is a formula used to find the solutions, I repeat, solutions of the quadratic equation right here. We have been working with the quadratic equation since the beginning of this chapter. We found solutions to this quadratic equation by factoring, by graphing, and by completing the square. And now we have another tool in our toolkit, and that is the quadratic formula right here. What is the quadratic formula? This is how you read it. It's opposite b plus or minus the square root of the whole thing, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. A cannot be 0 because if it was 0 there would be no x squared term, and b squared minus 4ac has to be greater than or equal to 0. But before we get started with the quadratic formula, I just want to review our a, b, and c terms. What is my a term here? My a term is in front of my x squared term, so my a term is going to be 2. My b term is in front of the x term, so it's going to be negative 3. My c is 6. Same thing on number 2. Here, my a term is negative 3. My b is attached to the x term, or is attached to the x, so that's going to be a positive 4. Now c term, is there a lone number here? We have 0 on this side, but that's not our c. Is there anything added or subtracted to 4x? No, there isn't. So if there's nothing added or subtracted here, what is it? How do you represent nothing in math? Just with a 0, so c would be 0. Now let's try to solve some of these equations using the quadratic formula. But written on your previous slide, what does number 3 have to be written as? And what does it have to equal? Using the quadratic formula, it has to equal 0. So we have to subtract the 35 over. So now it's x squared minus 2x minus 35, and that equals 0. So it has to equal 0. Now again, find your a, b, and c terms. My a term, how many x squareds do I have? I just have one of them. My b is negative 2, thanks to that minus sign in front of the 2. C, negative 35. Now I'm going to plug this a, b, and c into right here. So first things first, I have opposite b. Well, what is opposite b? That is a positive 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So it's going to be a negative 2 squared. And I'm going to write that in parentheses so we know that we have to square that negative. Minus 4, and then our a is 1. And then our c is a negative 35. And now all of this is underneath this square root. Also, with this fraction bar, ladies and gentlemen, this fraction bar is underneath everything. All right, is underneath everything, not just this part, but everything. That goes all over the top of 2 times 1. Now let's simplify this. I'm just going to simplify this, what's in the square root. So let's keep rocking. It's 2 plus or minus the square root of, the negative 2 squared is 4. And then we have a negative times a negative, so it makes a positive 140. Now that's the trickiest part about these problems. Pay attention to your negatives. It's a negative times a negative makes a positive 140. Again, that's all over the top of. This is all on top of this fraction bar. 2 times 1 is 2. We keep simplifying. It's 2 plus or minus the square root of 144 all over 2. Now, take out your calculator. The square root of 144 is 12, so it's 2 plus or minus 12 all over 2. Now, what's this plus and minus mean? Well, it is 2 plus 12 all over 2. And then what's the other part? You have 2 minus 12 all over 2. So sticking with the blue part, 2 minus 12 is a negative 10 divided by 2, which is negative 5. So this is one of our answers, just one. What's the other half? Well, 2 plus 12 is 14. That goes all over 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So our two answers are 7 and negative 5. Trying another one. Looking at number 4, again, point out your a, b, and c. Here, my a is 2. My b is a -2. That's important. A -2 and my c is a -5. Plugging it in right here. Opposite b is +2, plus or minus the square root of, the whole square root of -2 squared. That is being squared, minus 4 times 2 times -5. This is all inside the square root. That goes over the top of 2 times 2. I'm going to rewrite this whole thing as 2 plus or minus the square root of. Now that's -2 squared, so it's going to be a positive because negative times negative is a positive. We also have a negative times a negative here, so it's going to be a positive 40. That goes all over. So this whole thing is over the fraction bar, over 4. It equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 44 all over 4. Now if you punch 44 into your calculator, you will see it does not come out nice like it did before. Here we have 2 plus minus 6.6 all over 4. Now, if it does not come out nice, that's fine. Let's round to the 10th. There's going to be some problems today where we'll have to round to the 10th, so that's one digit after the decimal. Now let's just go ahead and solve this. We get 2 plus 6.6 over 4 and 2 minus 6.6 over, you guessed it, 4. Let's do it the red first. So it's 8.6 divided by 4, which gives us 2.2. And now for the blue guy, we subtract to get a negative 4.6 divided by 4 to get a negative 1.2. So our two solutions are negative 1.2 and 2.2. Now the last one with 5. We have to ask ourselves, does that equal 0? No, it does not. How do we get it to 0? I like to keep this term positive, so I'm going to subtract and add both of those numbers over there. So it's going to be 2x squared as I subtract my 12x over, as I add my 18 over, equals 0. Then our a is 2, our b is negative 12, and our c is 18. Plugging these into our quadratic formula, we have opposite 12, which is 12 plus minus the square root of b squared, which is negative 12, squared, minus 4 times 2 times c, which is 18. And that all goes over. And again, this is all over 2 times 2. And we're going to clean this up a little bit. We have 12 plus or minus the square root of 12 squared is 144. Then we have all of this is minus 144. That all goes over 4. If we keep going, for 144 minus 144 is 0, so it's just 12 over 4, right? Because this turns into 0. So 12 over 4 is 3. So now we just have one solution, and that solution is 3. So right now we can have either two solutions or one solution, and that does it for section 9.5, solving quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula, part 1. Good day!